Welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Just wanted to start by introducing myself and give you a reason to listen to me. Really, I know there's a lot of players in this realm of baseball, in this recruiting realm that say that they have been there and done that, and you know, I truly believe that I can help. So. First off, I played in this Douglas County area. I went to Douglas County High School and played um, one thing about my playing career that I think is super relevant is that I've played at three different levels. So I played at the junior college level, I played at the Division I level, and then I played at the Division II level at CSU Pueblo, where I then took over as an assistant coach and worked my way all the way up to associate head coach at CSU Pueblo, which included being a recruiting coordinator. So I've lived this on both sides now. After I left CSU Pueblo in 2020, I moved back to Castle Rock and ran Marucci Hitter's House and also our club teams at Marucci. Um, and recently, I think last October, I got a scouting job with the Detroit Tigers as well. And then right around that same time, took a job as the head coach at Ballard Christian. So um, super excited for all of those things. But if you know me, you know that my passion and my fire, there's really two of them. One is coaching. I love coaching. I love trying to win baseball games, and I love the game of baseball. And then two is the recruiting side of things and helping our players to get to the next level. It is something that I'm extremely passionate about. I love diving into the weeds with every single player that wants to, and really helping them through that journey. And I think that my track record with the teams that I have coached proves that. I think over the last 5 years since I've done this, we've had over 20 guys sign D1 commitments, and then we've had actually a 100% success rate placing guys at the college level. So something that I'm passionate about and hopefully very knowledgeable about as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Nick Thurlow, the owner of Next Era, who is helping me in this endeavor.
Yeah, what's up, guys? So I'm just gonna kind of I'll be brief because my playing career wasn't as fun and exciting as Eddie there. I was more of a always hurt type of guy. That's where my passion came from and where I went with my career path with physical therapy. And I've owned Next Era for about 10 years now in Colorado and going on 5 years down here in Arizona, which is where I'm at right now. We have everything from physical therapy to, training, pitching development. And when Eddie came to me with this idea of recruiting, I was super excited because the reason why we've invested so much in Colorado baseball and all the tech that we have in the facility is ultimately to get kids to the next level. So I'm blessed enough to work more in the professional world where, I'm more of a concierge PT at this point, working privately with some pretty big league guys, just me and Crochet hanging out there in the off season. So very blessed to be on that realm of things. But I also still love when I come to the facility and we're seeing kids in there and seeing the high school kids really getting after it and knowing what it takes to the next level. So I'm going to kind of be along the ride here to kind of explain some of the tech that we have and more of that training side on the recruiting aspect. So
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Okay, so we start this off. I just want to start off by giving you guys a little bit of education on what college baseball looks like this day and age. It's constantly evolving and getting different. And actually, post COVID, it's gotten extremely difficult to navigate. And so that's why I'm here to help you guys. And so I always start this presentation by just talking about the different levels of college baseball. There's five levels, but really within those levels, there's other levels. So I would say altogether, you're probably looking at about, 8 to 10 different levels of college baseball. The one at the top is obviously Division I. That's the one that everybody's the most familiar with, I would say. That's your Power Five schools, your TCUs, your Vanderbilts, your LSUs. Then you go down to a little bit lower level of Division I baseball. And when I say a lower level, guys, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not as competitive. It just means that typically they have a little bit less money that they can work with, just from a budget standpoint. So mid majors, that would be like your Oral Roberts, who was recently in Omaha. I don't think you can put Coastal Carolina in that realm anymore. I think they're pretty much a Power Five. Another mid-major would be like Grand Canyon. Okay, still really good baseball programs, but maybe not quite the budget that some of these Power Five schools have. Just really based off of the fact that some of them don't make as much money through football and basketball is really what it is. And then small Division I schools, that would be like the Division I school that I attended, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. That's like the lowest level of Division I baseball. Again, still really good players, good coaches, but dealing with a different amount of money that they can work with, both on the um, recruiting side of things, so their recruiting budget, what they can do to get coaches out to see players, and then on their scholarship money as well. So we'll dive deep into that a little bit. But the second portion down is Division II. That's the level that I coached at CSU Pueblo in the RMAC. Division II baseball is really good. And post-COVID, guys, most of these levels, really all of these levels, the baseball at each level is getting better by the day. And nothing to bat an eye at. All of college baseball is good. It's just, different levels attract different talent. But Division II, again, at the Division II level, you're allotted 9 scholarships. So at the Division I level, this just changed. You're now allotted 34 full scholarships. That does not mean that every Division I school is able to offer that because it's institution funded. And so it's really the money that they have available is what they're going to give their coaching staff to go recruit with to give out as scholarship money. Division II, they have 9. And so to put that in perspective, while I was at CSU Pueblo, yes, the NCAA said, hey, you have 9 full scholarships that you can recruit with. But because of enrollment and because of the money that was on hand through our university, we were really only ever given 5.4 full scholarships, I would say. And so ideally, I hope for CSU Pueblo that's getting better. But the reality is most schools that aren't D1, not many of them are fully funded up to what the NCAA says they're allowed to give out just because of the money that they have through their institution. We moved down to Division III. Division III is an awesome level of baseball as well through the NCAA. The difference there is that Division III schools cannot offer athletic money, athletic scholarships they cannot offer. So all of the aid that you're going to get at Division III school is either academic or through federal financial aid. And so that's why grades are important because you can get really good scholarships to a Division III program through academics. Um, Further down the list, you go to NAIA. So NAIA and the last one, NJCAA, those are both separate than the NCAA. They're their own governing bodies. They abide by a different set of rules than the NCAA has. NAIA is a great level as well. There was actually a team last year at the NAIA level that went undefeated and won the national championship. Very good level of baseball. A lot of guys that end up in Pro Bowl go to the NAIA route. A lot of private schools. Typically, NAIA schools' tuition levels are pretty high. Scholarship levels can be high as well. The big difference in NAIA to NCAA, again, the rules. They don't have the same rules that the NCAA has, both athletically and then also academically. So sometimes you'll see guys that go NAIA that just couldn't make it academically into an NCAA institution, so they're forced to go NAIA. But I will say that like your top NAIA schools, they are really, really good. Like the team that went undefeated last year at the NAIA level probably could have gone out and beaten a bunch of Division I schools. So definitely not a bad level of baseball. It's just a little bit different in how they go about their business. And then finally, the NJCAA, commonly known as JUCO. JUCO route is one that I'm a big proponent for, especially nowadays. Just given, the fact, and we'll dive deeper into this, but JUCO is a great route for a lot of our players. It gives you an opportunity to play right away. And a lot of people don't know, but there's actually 3 different levels within junior college baseball. So there's your Division I JUCOs, and typically they are able to give full tuition and room and board. Division II, which is allowed to give athletic scholarship, but they're not allowed to give room and board. Um, so they can give you money towards your tuition and fees, but they can't give you housing basically. And then Division III JUCO, which is basically the same as Division III NCAA, they're not allowed to give athletic scholarships. And so, when I was recruiting, a lot of times this Division II and Division III JUCOs, they just don't get as much attention on the recruiting scene from NCAA schools. So I was able to find some really, really good players at Division II JUCOs, mainly in the Arizona area. So In fact, the one player that I've coached that now plays in the big leagues came from a Division II junior college in Phoenix called Glendale Community College. So yeah, those are the different levels of college baseball. Um, something that's really popped up over the last, I would say, 6, 7 years. It was just starting to become a thing. When I was still at CSU Pueblo, ending my career there, is the transfer portal. So last year, the transfer portal saw over 6,000 baseball athletes in it, which is crazy. That is so many kids looking to transfer schools after, a season. So just something to keep in mind there. Very different than most of the adults on this call would have been used to while they were in college. This didn't exist back then. Back in the day, if you transferred, you had to sit out a year. Not the case anymore. The transfer portal is alive and well, as you can see, over 6,000 athletes in it last year, and that number is just going to keep growing. And so that's just something to keep an eye on. It's increasingly getting harder to play at the next level, and especially at the highest level, because these higher level Division I schools, when they're going out recruiting, now they're going to the transfer portal first. Okay, so they're going to the transfer portal, identifying the best talent that's in the portal before they even look at high school players. And the reason they're doing that is pretty simple. They want guys that have proven that they can play at the college level, to come in and win right away. Um, and so Division I roster size is now cut down to 34 spots during the spring as well, which is a big change, and that just happened. And so, typically in the past, you would see Division I rosters around 45, 50 sometimes, and some of these schools are still doing that in the fall. They're still allowing that many players to come in, but then they're cutting, 16 to 20 players to get down to that 34 number, by the time the spring starts. And so you're seeing a lot more players that, would have been on Division I rosters kind of trickle down after they can't make that 34 man roster. Another thing that's kind of adding to this college baseball being the most elite level of baseball that it's ever been is, post COVID, the MLB draft cut from 40 rounds to 20. And so that's 20 rounds. So over 600 players that would have been drafted that would have potentially signed to go play professional baseball are now not being drafted and have to go into college to play. So the pool of players has just increased quite a bit through the transfer portal and through the amateur draft. Last year, the average age of player in the SEC was about 22 years old. So if you put that in perspective, I mean, the average player playing on any given night in the SEC is basically graduate level age, which is pretty crazy. So because of all this, the lower levels of college baseball are getting a lot better. So the JUCO route is getting increasingly attractive because it's an opportunity for you to go play. JUCO, NAI, Division III. We have a couple players that, from the high school that I coach at, that just signed D3, and we're talking really good baseball players. And so it's not anything to say Division III is bad or JUCO is bad. Like, all of these areas of college baseball are really good right now. And so with that, I would say my biggest piece of advice as we get into this is just always remember that the biggest thing I can tell you is go where you're wanted. Everybody wants to post an Instagram post saying they signed to LSU, but the reality is, you want to go somewhere where that coaching staff wants you, because that's going to be your best chance to get on the field. And so we don't want any of our players to go somewhere where they can't play and end up sitting the bench, and then they're not happy, and then they're in the portal, and then they're transferring schools. And take that from a guy that transferred to 3 different colleges. By the time I ended up where I was going to graduate, CSU Pueblo, I had transferred so many times, that some of my credits didn't transfer, and I actually had to spend an extra year in college, an extra year of tuition, an extra year of student loans just to get my degree. So, just something to think about there. So basically, what I'm going to give you tonight is what I would do if I was in your guys' shoes to get to that next level. And it gives you a roadmap on how to treat this journey. If you hear me, guys, pause. If you hear me pause, it's just because I'm taking a drink of my water. So, um, So we'll get into that. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is athlete evaluation. So it's really hard to tell you anything about where you're going to fit at the college level without first getting a good feel for who you are currently as a player. And that could be as a freshman, that could be as a senior. It's never too late to get this process started. A big part of that's academic. We just talked about, how certain schools can only give academic. Pretty much every school has academic scholarships that they can offer. And so the better your grades, the better your opportunities. And that's the way it's always been. It's the way it's always going to be. So really focus on those books. But that's something that I would dive deep into each and every one of you is like where your grades at, what's some goals that we can set in order to give ourselves the best opportunity to get some academic scholarships. Athletic evaluations, so all the measurables. This is something that NextEra is going to help me with incredibly, is just getting a baseline number through their assessments on where you're exactly at. Because at the end of the day, we all like to say, I throw 90, or my exit velo is a 102, or I can lift a certain amount in the weight room. But until we get those firm numbers, we don't really know how to set up the rest of your roadmap. And then we'll talk a little bit about, the difference in your evaluation and then the difference in what you think you want for your college baseball career to look like. And so this is something that I am super excited with being with NextEra, their ability to accurately assess our players and give them an idea of where they currently are and then where we need to take that. So I'll hand this over to Nick, and he's going to talk just a little bit more about the NextEra College Composite Score and what we can do for you guys.
Yeah, so if anybody's trained with us or has had an assessment with us, this is something that we've been kind of quietly working on in the background for really the last like 3 to 4 years. We invested in a bunch of equipment 3, 4 years ago through Vald Technology. They're literally in every MLB organization except for I think the Rockies, honestly. And they are literally the gold standard when it comes to measuring athletes, when it comes to their ability to output force or their range of motion, anything like that. What we did is we took their technology and we created our own assessment that was in part by using a lot of their normative data that they have from MLB and Division I colleges and everything else. In addition to, if anybody's been at our facility in the summertime, whether it's Arizona or Colorado, we have, probably 100 college kids that train with us every year. So we're able to collect all of their data and essentially create this composite score. And the idea behind that is to be able to take what a collegiate athlete scores in various categories, measure a high school kid, and compare them. So what we can do is essentially grade you from 0 to 100 on how you stack up next to what college kids are outputting. I don't know if you guys can see this real well. It's kind of small on my screen, but I think the first and foremost, the biggest thing is body weight. So being able to track and measure body weight. Eddie had that slide on there on how the average, SEC kid was 22 years old. I think that average SEC kid is weighing around 190 to 200 pounds too. And so to be able to track and measure that throughout your high school career, in addition to just kind of having the wherewithal of like, hey, nutrition's a big part of development. And then we also are going to use our force plates to measure your ability to output force. There's gold standard across collegiate athletes of how much force or how strong is somebody, and then there's correlations to how hard they hit, how hard they throw. So not only can we measure velocity and exit velo and all those normal things that we do when we're at those PBR showcases and PG, but we're taking it another step further and we're saying, is there a correlation between how strong you are, how big you are, and then how hard can you throw? What's your exit velo on hitting? In addition to that, we're going to create a we have a strength index. So that strength index is going to be a measure of just kind of like how twitchy you are, how fast you are. And then we're going to use that data in order to kind of measure you throughout the year to make sure that you're staying healthy. Because if your nervous system isn't working well, then there's higher risk for injury. One of the things just, as a PT, one of the things that I see is it's hard for a kid to get recruited if he's hurt. It's hard for a kid to go to, you guys, parents are really, they'll spend the $500 on a showcase and then they can't do it because they get hurt or they're not prepared for it. They go to it and they get hurt. So what we want to do is use these numbers to make sure you're okay to go to those showcases, to make sure that, you're not in like a yellow flag situation walking into a showcase and you're at risk for injury. Or are your numbers really poor and maybe you shouldn't do that showcase, which is what Eddie's going to kind of help with on the advisor aspect of this. In addition to that, if you go to the next slide, Eddie, so we've on our pitching department, Braden Thor is my pitching director, and then Coach Cody Rimko, who I snagged from the Phillies as he was finishing up kind of an internship. Cody's really going to kind of be the driving mechanism between the high school kids as like a high school pitching coordinator during the summer for USA Prime. And we're going to use these pitch grades in addition to TrackMan data. And essentially, we're going to grade, a fastball to at not only at the high school level, but also to how does your fastball stack up to a collegiate fastball? How does your slider stack up to a collegiate slider? And then also just use that from a development standpoint in order to make sure, like, hey, when you go to a showcase, should you be throwing that slider, or does it grade really poorly, and we should maybe tuck that one away for a weekend? So a lot of cool stuff we can do on the pitching side. These are actually the exact same reports that we go over with our big league guys in season. So like I mentioned Crochet earlier. So after Crochet start, he literally the next day goes through and does force play testing, does arm strength testing, and then we go over it before he throws his bullpen. In addition to, he goes over these pitch reports with our pitching director in Arizona. So we're giving you guys the same stuff that we use at the MLB level, and then just kind of, taking and comparing it to data that's more relative to where the kids are at. So super excited about this. It's going to be, we're working on a portal. We actually have a phone call tomorrow where you guys can actually access this stuff and be able to kind of track and manage it. So we're not uploading PDFs. But that's kind of the goal for this first round this summer, is to have you guys have a website you can log into and say, hey, did I lose 10 pounds over the summer because I wasn't eating right? Or is my power output down because I wasn't hitting the gym enough? Or is my fastball velo down? So we can really kind of track and manage it. That's it on that.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. That's awesome. I'm sure everybody on this call is like, holy cow, this is
It's
this is
cool
getting
stuff,
to a
man.
point. Yeah, this is really cool. So, um, and then based off of that assessment that we're gonna do, then we can sit down with each player and set goals. Okay. So this is depending on what the athlete wants. I would, say most of the people on this call right now, your end goal is to play Division I baseball, and that's totally fine, or professional baseball, and that's great. Um, but given these assessments, we can tell where you're actually at, and then what we need to do to get you to where you need to be to play in that realm. And so, I tell all of our guys, it's like it's pretty easy to go. You're 15 years old, you're throwing the ball as a shortstop across the field at 78 miles an hour. Well, why don't you look up who's starting at shortstop for LSU and look up his perfect game data when he was 15, and see how far we are off of that, because that'll tell you exactly where you're at. And we're lucky this day and age, pretty much all of that stuff is out there on the internet. You can find most players that are available, all their data. So goals can vary from academic to athletic and must meet up with standards at level desired. So we're going to set some long-term goals. So let's say we have a pitcher that's coming in, goes and works out with Braden, and we see that his fastball is at 80 miles an hour. And his goal is to end up at 90, 92 to 95 over a 4-year period. Well, that's a good final ending goal. We can kind of work backwards from there and set up 3-month goals and then 6-month goals, so that we can actually see how they're tracking these goals, and hopefully eventually reaching those goals. But the idea behind it is that we're actively. Oh, let me get Bubba muted. So the idea behind it there is that we're actively tracking, throughout that goal chasing period, if they're getting those short-term goals accomplished. So make sure the goals are attainable. I think that's another beautiful thing for me, is I've just been doing this on my own for my players over the last 5 years without the ability to have these hard numbers in an awesome facility like we have now, with these professionals that can track these numbers a lot better than we can, on a daily basis. So we're going to know, if you're not tracking towards your goals, and that's okay, but we got to change our plan then if that's the case. And then we start to get to work. So after we set those goals, then it's time to put in the work, because obviously, as y'all know, nothing good comes easy. And so it's going to be a lot of hard work, but it is something that we can definitely get to. So this is the chasing the goal segment. And this is where really, I can come in and help you get there. So nothing great comes easy. It's going to be hard playing baseball at the college level. I just got done telling you guys how much harder it is to play college baseball now than it was 10, 20 years ago. And that's the kind of work ethic that we're looking for with the players that want to chase those goals. It's not going to come easy. We can sit down with you and go through your grades and set you up with academic help if we need it. Obviously, test scores are very important for academic scholarships as well, and acceptance rates. So, the weight room, obviously, we have great professionals here at NextEra that we can sit down with them and talk through these goals and where we want to get to on the strength side. Skill work, we have excellent coaches that can help us through all of that stuff, as far as, catching, pitching, hitting, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can get you with the right people if we're not them already. Nutrition, same thing. And then social life is one that I really like to talk about. The best players that I've played with, I'm talking guys that have made it to the big leagues, guys that I've coached that have made it to the big leagues or have played high level Division I baseball. It doesn't mean that they don't have a social life, but they know how to compartmentalize their life to put the emphasis on grades and baseball, with the social life of high school kind of not taking a backseat, but taking a place in your life that doesn't overwhelm the other two areas. Because the truth is, this takes a lot of work and you have to be committed to it. And so it's always a sacrifice. But, I think the best thing about all of this that everybody sitting on this call uh, needs to realize is that all of this, it may cost a little bit of money. It may cost a little bit of time. You may not get to go to prom. You may not get to go on that 2 week long vacation. But you have to look at it as an investment towards the future, because the truth is, when we're sitting there on National Signing Day and you're signing a scholarship to a high level school, let's say, I don't know, Regis University here in Denver, where tuition's 40 grand a year and you're getting a $30,000 scholarship. Well, that's a pretty good investment that you laid down starting when you were a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior in high school, to save you a lot of money in the long run. So just something to think about there. I know everybody on this call has those dreams. So just start thinking of it as an investment. You're not going to get to those goals unless you truly invest in your future. Um, so once we lay down and chase those goals, obviously we're going to track those over a period of time, whether that's a year, whether that's 2 years, whether that's your whole high school career. We need to sit down and have a real honest conversation about, are you reaching those goals? And so, if the answer to that is yes, then it's time to begin the process of targeting programs and formulating a plan on how we're going to get you seen and actually recruited by those schools that you want to go to. If the answer is no, you haven't reached those goals, that's okay. It's just you have to be open to the idea that maybe your target schools at the very beginning of this change throughout this process. And that happens, I would say, probably for 95% of players. They have this dream out of middle school coming into high school that, they're going to play in the SEC or they're going to get drafted out of high school. And the reality is, guys, there's, a very small percentage of players in the whole country that get those opportunities right away. Um, Underdog stories, there's so many guys that I've coached or I've played with that have started at a small junior college, who have eventually made it all the way. And we'll go over some of those stories here towards the end of the presentation. But one story that I love to share is my cousin Jeff. My cousin Jeff walked on at Otero Junior College, which, if you're familiar with Otero, it's in La Junta, Colorado, in Region 9, which, I don't think Region 9, I wouldn't say it's like one of the top JUCO conferences in the country or anything like that. It's a small junior college conference, and Otero is a small junior college. Well, he had to walk on there to even get an opportunity. Well, he walks on at Otero, has a great career there, ends up getting a scholarship to a Division II school, pitches really, really well there, and then gets drafted by the Red Sox, ends up getting released by the Red Sox immediately because he couldn't pass his physical because he didn't have awesome things like NextEra physical therapy to take care of him and make sure he was doing the right things as he was pitching all these college games. So he gets released by the Red Sox, plays indie ball for like 6 years, gets signed by the Yankees, and then ultimately makes it all the way up to AAA with the Yankees before finally getting released and calling it a career. So that's just a really cool story of a guy that really had to grind through all of the different levels of college baseball and had to humble himself. I grew up with Jeff. He's 7 years older than me, and I would have told you when he was in high school, like, man, this kid's really good. Well, that really good had to walk on at a small junior college, but he still reached his goals of playing professional baseball. So don't ever give up. This game rewards people that want to grind and want to work really, really hard to get to those goals. All right. So if we're sitting there and we say, okay, yes, you have reached your goals, then the next step is to put into place an action plan. So we target programs. We call them fives. I ask all of my players to target 5 programs at each level that they think would be attractive to them. This is different for every player. Some players are like, well, I just want to play somewhere warm. That's a common thing that we hear out of a lot of Colorado players is, hey, I just want to go where it's warm, like Arizona, Florida, the South, whatever. Okay, that's fine, but give me 5 schools in those areas at each level. So Division I, Division II, JUCO, NAIA, and then we start reaching out to those schools. Talk a little bit about a recruiting service. So obviously, there's a lot of people in that market. There's a lot of companies in that market. And I think the main thing that you want to make sure of if you're going to go spend money with people is that they're going to work for you personally. I think a lot of these recruiting services out there, they take your money, they give you some information on what college baseball is, and then, you're just entered into a database and you're just a number to them. And they don't know anything about you personally or anything like that. They just are pumping out the same information to you that they send to thousands of athletes. And a story about that, guys, is while I was the recruiting coordinator at CSU Pueblo, so we're talking a Division II school in the RMAC in Colorado, a good program, but by no means like a national power or anything like that. I was getting like 100 to 200 emails a day from recruiting services, players. The recruiting services, they literally just push out like a database of hundreds of athletes. And if you guys know anything about college baseball, especially college baseball that isn't Power Five, recruiting budgets are not very big, and coaches are not well paid. In fact, the majority of the time I was coaching at CSU Pueblo, I was making borderline poverty level income. And so to think that a recruiting coordinator has the time to click through all 300 athletes that were just pushed out by this recruiting service that may or may not even have interest in that school, it's just a little unrealistic. So that's what I would say about recruiting services is if you're going to do it, make sure that they have the player's best interest in mind and they're going to fight for you personally. And they're not just going to, put you in a database and send that out to colleges. That's really not going to help you. Talk a little bit about recruiting video. This has always been a thing, but I think it got a lot more relevant as we went through COVID and coaches weren't able to get out and see players play. And so a lot of people just started making recruiting videos and pushing those out to college coaches, and things like Twitter or X now or Instagram became relevant in the recruiting realm. And so we'll talk about that more as we go through and as we sit down with you guys one-on-one. But I would tell you right now, like the biggest thing is make sure your recruiting video has measurables on the video. I can't tell you how many times a player would send me a video of them pitching and say they were a 90-mile-an-hour arm, but it doesn't show that on the video. And then I would go watch them, and of course it was 83 to 85, and it wastes my time and immediately cross them off the list because number one, I feel lied to. Number two, they're not good enough to play for our program at the time. So you want to put those measurables on there on your video so that the college coach can see it, confirm it, and say, okay, this is a kid I'm interested in, or okay, this is a kid I'm not interested in. And that kind of goes back into that evaluation period. We don't really want to be sending out these videos unless you're reaching the goals of those measurables we want to be desirable. You don't want to try to put yourself out there to be recruited until you're recruitable, in sense. So once we do that, we're going to start reaching out, getting in front of programs. So, I'm a big part of that. I think that recruiting services, the big ones, a lot of times, like I said, you're just a name in a database. I think the majority of recruiting guys, it's really done through personal relationships and phone calls and relationships that you've built with college coaches. And so I think that's something that I can offer that sets me apart from the majority of recruiting services out there is I've made a ton of relationships with college coaches throughout the country. And not just me, it's every resource that we have available through NextEra, through USA Prime, through all of our connections. Chances are good if there's a program out there, we know somebody there, we know somebody that's played there, or we know somebody that knows something about that program that we can get a foot in the door. And so that's really important. We'll do that for you for those top level clients. One thing to really think about too, guys, is I know that the majority of you guys may be USA Prime players or play for me or play for Coach Brandt or really anybody in our organization or outside organizations too. You want to make sure that if you're playing for an organization, they're doing right by you and putting you where you need to be to get recruited. And so there's two parts of that. Number one is, are you playing in the right tournaments, which is something that we can help you with? Are you going to the right showcases? Are you in the right areas to be seen? Because there's certain tournaments that college coaches don't go to, and there's certain tournaments that are highly recruited, and we can help you with that. And same thing with showcases. Um, and then also, is your travel baseball team bought into you as the position that you want to play in college? Now, part of that is that, excuse me, part of that is that you need to be realistic and understand that sometimes if your coach is putting you in a certain position, it's because he thinks that that's your best shot to go to college, and you need to have honest conversations with that coach about it. But if you're on a travel ball team and let's say you want to play third base in college and you don't touch third base all summer or all fall, well, that's probably a problem that we need to talk about and make sure that we're putting you in those positions to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward in front of those college coaches. Because the truth is, if they don't see you do it, it's hard for them, to make that connection and sign you if they haven't seen you play that position. And then just using the resources available to get in touch with coaches. And like I said, a lot of that has to be done through personal connections, personal relationships from reputable, respectable organizations. And so that's one thing that I'm very adamant about is that I don't lie to players about where they're at, and I don't lie for players to get them to a school. It does us no good to lie to a college program, get you signed so that we can feel good about putting it on Instagram. And then you show up on campus and you're not ready to play at that program because that hurts you. That hurts the college program. It hurts our reputation because they'll no longer come to us for players. You're transferring and they're out of player and they got to go find somebody else. So that's one thing that I'm adamant about as a recruiting advisor is that I will be honest with you every step of the way so that you can put yourself in the best position possible. And again, this is an investment for the future. Getting in front of the programs in your target area. So this doesn't happen by chance. I think there's a misconception out there that just because I play travel ball, I'm gonna get exposure. Not the case, not necessarily the case. You have to work to get that exposure. Um, and so an example of this is if we're going to play in a big tournament in Georgia, WWBA is the one that pops up because that's the one that most people go to. Drawing a circle around Atlanta 250 mile radius, and then looking at the college programs in that area that are realistically going to come to that tournament and watch you, and then reaching out to those programs. Because the reality is, guys, aside from Division I baseball, the recruiting budgets of college baseball programs, like the majority of them that aren't the cream of the crop, is not a big recruiting budget. So they can't go to every tournament. So they're picking and choosing where they go. And typically they're not just going to a tournament and sitting down and hoping they find guys. It doesn't happen that way. They're much more apt to sign you and come watch you if they've had dialogue with you up front. And so, a big one for us when I was at CSU Pueblo was going to the Fall Classic in Arizona. And you would be amazed how many college coaches were there, but they're there watching specific players that they've already talked to. It's not just sit there for 8 hours in the sun and bake, hoping that I find a guy. It doesn't work like that. So got to give those coaches the resources needed to see you play live. And that's got to be directed too. And this is after we've already started dialogue with that school and they've shown interest. Hey, coach, I play in Atlanta today. We're at this complex. We play at this time. I will be in the lineup. I'm hitting in this hole. This is my jersey number. Here's the position I will be playing. You want to make it as easy as possible on those coaches so they can show up and see you play. And then obviously, the majority of these coaches can't follow you around for the summer or the fall. So, getting them updates throughout your summer, fall, spring is really important because ultimately there are so many high school baseball players that are wanting to play college baseball that are reaching out to these coaches. If you don't constantly stay at the top of their mind in their inbox and stay there, it's easy for them to forget about you because, like I said, there's a lot of players out there. The talent pool is growing increasingly. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so once we get past that point and we have talked to schools enough that they want us to come check out their campus. This is one of my favorite parts that I love to help players get through is the visit portion. So a lot of people don't know this, but pretty much every college has what they call official visits and then what they call unofficial visits. Truthfully, official visits are great at the Division I level because they have the money to make sure that they're really cool. But at the anywhere lower than like Power Five, even some mid majors, but lower than that, Division II, Division III, JUCO, typically there's only two coaches on staff. Well, not on staff, but on salary. And so those are the guys that are handling the recruiting, and they don't have the time to run 100 official visits a year. Official visits are full of a lot of paperwork, a lot of rule watching, all that stuff. Unofficial visits are a little bit different. There's not that much of a paper trail. You can come in, work out for them, do things for them that are a lot different. So we just want to make sure that we're differentiating between the two. And if you're talking to a college coach and they mention a visit, make sure you know which one you're going on. But also, if they don't seem apt to bring you in on an official visit, it's not a knock on you. It's just that sometimes unofficial visits are a lot easier for them to get done what they need to get done. So, like at CSU Pueblo, we very rarely did official visits because, again, paper trail, potential recruiting violations. You can't let a player stay with players. You can't take them out for meals unless you document everything. Unofficial visits, man, we could bring players in, work them out with our team so we could see if they were a fit right away. They could be in the dugout with us pregame, all that stuff where we weren't really going to get in trouble for it. And we were making sure that the player got to feel our culture, not just a tour of the campus and a meal. And everything that everybody does on the recruiting side. So also something to be aware of, just because you are trying to be recruited and you're selling yourself, those colleges are also selling themselves to you. And so you want to be able to see through the BS. A lot of these recruiters are very good used car salesmen and they're going to tell you what you want to hear. So I would be very, very adamant that you talk to the players, talk to people who have played in that program. And this is another way that we can really help you. Really, really help you is I guarantee you, no matter where you're going, we know somebody who's either played there, we know a coach that's coached there, we might know somebody currently on the staff, and we can get a better feel for what they're actually like. And that kind of leads it into asking targeted questions. When you go on a visit, it's almost like a job interview. And so the adults on this call will understand that like job interviews, you don't really want to show up for a job interview for a job you want unprepared. You want to come in prepared, knowing what you're going to ask, maybe going through a couple test interviews prior to that process and making sure that you're ready for that. Um, Player, not parent. So this is huge. Please make sure when you're on a visit or really anytime you're talking to a college coach, it's the player doing the majority of the talking, not the parent, because that is a major turnoff for college coaches if the player can't speak for themselves, because ultimately, mom and dad aren't going to college with you. So it's important that you're able to speak for yourself and ask questions and come off like you're mature enough to make this step into college baseball. And so it goes a long way if we can sit down prior to these visits and kind of map out what this is going to look like, or even a phone call. I had a player at Valor 2 weeks ago that was like, "Hey, I'm about to have a call with the school I really want to go to, can you help me with this? Absolutely. That's one thing that I really like. It's like, what does that coach want to hear from me? Well, here you go. And here's some questions that you should probably ask of him that are going to make him think that you're truly interested in their program and that you would be a good fit. And then the last thing I'll say about the visit thing, it's really important to me that you guys try to get on the dugout if possible. And so what I'm talking about this is try to go to a series. Most teams play fall games. And then obviously, if you can get out there in the spring while they're playing, their championship segment of their season, it's very important that you see them in the heat of battle. But if you can get in the dugout, that's ideal because you can see what that coaching staff is like and how they coach. Because ultimately, if they're screamers and yellers and you don't react well to that, probably not a program you should go to, or vice versa. I've had players that really like to be coached hard, and then they go to a college where the coach is quiet and kind of lets everybody do their own thing. Not the best fit, and so we really want to make sure we're doing that. Some colleges won't let you in the dugout, and that's okay. That's okay, but what I would say is try to sit as close to the dugout as possible during one of their inter squads, scrimmage, game, whatever, and try to tune in to the dialogue that's coming out of that dugout because that's going to tell you a lot about what that program truly is. When they're taking you on your campus tour and they're showing you everything that they have in their facilities, sometimes they're a lot different than when they're fighting to win a game. And when they're fighting to win a game is when their true battle character really comes out, and you want to make sure you know who that is as a coach before you sign with them. So something to think about there. Okay, so after visits, ideally towards junior, senior year, sometimes early in junior year, we could start talking about getting a scholarship offer. And so this is a very, very important piece is that you understand what that means. Because as I stated at the very beginning, there's a small select few number of colleges out there that offer full rides, right? Like full rides in baseball just don't happen that much. And so what schools do is they take academic money and they stack it with baseball money. Okay. And so part of that scholarship that they're giving you isn't really coming out of their budget. Okay. And so I have to stop here and say, I'm not saying that academic scholarships are bad. Okay. Academic scholarships are awesome. They help a ton. But you mean more to that program if you're getting more baseball money than somebody else. Okay. So, to put that in perspective on opening day, when I was at CSU Pueblo, I didn't want to look at the bench and see that we're not starting a guy that's on 80% baseball money. That's a bad investment. That means I didn't do my job as a recruiter. So as much as it sucks to say, but it is the truth, those guys that are on more scholarship money out of the baseball budget typically get more opportunities on that team. So when you get that offer, it's important to have the wherewithal to dig deep into that offer into what those numbers actually mean as it relates to, do I have a chance to play at this place? And ideally, you have somebody there to help you with that because these can be a little bit difficult to go through sometimes. So, again, I think it's important that you guys understand what is their budget because, like for us at CSU Pueblo, like I said, we had 9 full scholarships that were offered to us, but really we only had 5, and so we never gave more than like 50% scholarship. So if we gave you 50%, that meant you meant a lot to us, And then there's financial aid and work study that's available. That you can look at through FAFSA, the federal government. You just apply, you send in your tax returns, and you find out if you qualify for money. That's a good one. Academic scholarships, like I said, the better your grades, the better opportunity you're going to get to make some money through the school. So we'll look through all of that for you. There's community scholarships out there available. Like in Douglas County, I got a community scholarship just because I played the most years of youth sports. And they gave me $1,000 right off the bat, but I wouldn't have known about it unless we did our research and wrote a little essay about how many years of youth sports I played. So all that stuff we're here to help with. This is just some of the dream So there on the left is Christian Fouch, who played for one of my Victus teams a while back, who ended up at Arkansas and now plays in the Red Sox organization. In the middle, Tucker Moore, he played at Douglas County High School, went to Mizzou out of high school, and then transfer portaled out to Liberty. He's currently at Liberty playing. And then on the right is Nathan Gutierrez, who played at Douglas County as well, played for us, went the JUCO route, and then to Metro State, and he's now at a different school to finish his career. So those are just a few of them. This is one of my favorite players here that I've ever coached, probably the best left-handed hitter that I've ever been around, Trenton Rowan. And Trenton had a very interesting track journey. He went to junior college and then went to the University of Arkansas. And then after that, he transfer portaled out to Utah Valley. So he's at Utah Valley now. They just posted a graphic with him being one of their top draft prospects coming up next year. And so a great opportunity there. I've guided him through his whole journey, and I'm still doing so. You know, I'm talking to the Tigers actively about hopefully drafting him. Christian Fouch, obviously, I mentioned him. He was the closer at Arkansas the last 2 years, currently pitching for the Boston Red Sox organization. He throws over 100 miles an hour, so that's pretty cool. And there's just a quote of him giving me a little pat on the back. So thank you, Christian, for that. This was a kid that I recruited out of a Division II junior college in Glendale, Arizona. Came to CSU Pueblo and ultimately got drafted in the 27th round. This was before they cut the draft down, so he wouldn't even had a chance. He then moved on to become the pitcher of the year in the Tigers organization. And then he made it all the way to the big leagues, was a big part of their initial playoff push 2 years ago. He got hurt last year, but he's back in their bullpen this year. And he's just a really good proponent of that journey of college baseball, right? You're talking about a kid that had to go to Division II JUCO out of high school, goes Division II after that. Ultimately, now he's in the big leagues. And so I'm happy to have had played a part in that, although he did most of the work for sure. And so these are just some things to do. Obviously, would like to help you guys all through this, but the first one is ncaaeligibilitycenter.org. I would highly recommend that you all get familiar with that site. You're not going to be able to play in the NCAA until you do. So you're going to send your transcripts there, your ACT, SAT scores, all that stuff go there so that the NCAA can decide if you're eligible to play once you get there. FAFSA.gov, that's where you're going to send all of your tax returns and stuff like that to determine whether or not you qualify for financial aid through that institution. I was lucky. I grew up in Castle Rock. My parents always, had really good jobs, and I didn't qualify for FAFSA. But what I did qualify for at the junior college that I went to was called No Need Work Study. And so what I did was work on the baseball field for an hour before practice, and they were able to give me $2,000 a semester. And I wouldn't have been able to get that unless I filled out my FAFSA. So ACT, SAT prep, we can help you with that. That's important, especially if you want to go to a high academic school. It's very important that we test well. And so we can help you with that, get you in the right places to make sure you test well and that your academics are where they need to be. I highly recommend that all of you guys start watching college baseball, a lot of it, because you're going to understand that the level of baseball is very high and the competitiveness is incredible. And so something that I see out of a lot of high school players is that they don't watch college baseball or even pro ball. They don't watch a lot of baseball. Well, it's hard for you to understand reaching that goal until you understand what it's really like. So highly recommend that. Get yourself an ESPN Plus login. There's currently games airing on ESPN Plus pretty much daily now. Look into training options. So we'll talk about this here in a second, but that is those are the things that I recommend that you guys get on as soon as possible. And so here's kind of our process, and I will hand this over to Nick so he can explain this in depth. But I hope that all of you guys will look into this process and get signed up with us as soon as possible so that we can start doing all of these steps. Again, we're going to start with an assessment so we can see where you're currently at. And then we're going to go into setting up one-on-one meetings with me. where we sit down and we go over that assessment score and what that means. And then, like I said, setting those goals, chasing those goals, basically walking you through this entire process. Guys, college baseball landscape, it's changing. It's hard. You need help. I'm just telling you right now, you want somebody in your corner that knows the game, that can help you through this process. So something to definitely look at highly. And then I'll let Nick jump in here to explain the services that we will offer through NextEra.
Yeah, so when Eddie and I were kind of putting our heads together on how we can make this work for you guys, and not only looking at what's out there through like the NSCA and some of the other recruiting companies that are out there, and looking at what they charge and what they provide, and we really wanted to kind of give everybody a bang for buck opportunity to not only utilize the services that we have in house, but also just the relationships. I mean, it's funny. I texted Eddie during this, like, "Hey, Trent Rowan, like he's at Utah Valley. The Utah Valley head strength coach was our intern 2 years ago." And then, oh, Detroit Tigers, that kid was hurt. I know the head athletic trainer with the Detroit Tigers. So just, baseball's a small world. I think anybody that's a part of it knows that. And, like he said, the personal aspect of this is really what we're trying to crush for you guys. Eddie, actually, if you go back to the last slide real quick, I'll just kind of highlight a few things. So we kind of want to have a nice, easy workflow in order to make this happen. So we created a link on our main page on our website, which we'll give you guys, and that's just going to be kind of like a reach out link so we can get information from you and kind of gauge where everybody's at in that process. The cool part is that for, one of the reasons why we joined up with USA Prime and created those scout and recruit teams and put all that together was that anybody that's an active NextEra member, so meaning maybe you don't play for a USA Prime team, but you train with us on the private side, or if you are on that USA Prime recruit or scout team, you are going to receive that composite score. It's just, hey, where do you stack up against other college kids? And then from there, we're going to schedule a consultation with Eddie so that you can go over that composite score and really, kind of learn what it means. The strength coaches and the pitching coaches and the PTs are going to break down that part with you right then and there. But it's important to kind of get that score in front of Eddie and then be able to go over it and see, which direction do you need to go. We are actively working on transitioning away from MindBody because it's been an absolute nightmare since joining up with, at the new facility in USA Prime. We're going to build out an actual like recruiting portal, like I mentioned earlier, where we can access all of this stuff and be able to kind of have it easily available for you. Recruiting at nexterapt.com, that's going to go straight to Eddie. And then that 720 number there, that's our facility number. So once we get our full scale PT operations over there, we're going to have 5 people working up front that are going to be able to kind of help Eddie with, directing traffic and who's reaching out and leaving messages and so on and so forth. So Eddie's not going to be along, this whole adventure on his own. We're going to have support staff to help him out. Once we get that composite score and we're going through it, we're going to give you what's called an athlete development plan. What the athlete development plan is we're going to summarize essentially what that assessment is, that performance assessment. So it's going to be your medical side of things. So, current injuries, past injuries, and then measuring arm strength, hip mobility, those types of things. And then it's going to have your, if you did a motion capture with us on the pitch, if you're a pitcher and did a motion capture, it's going to have your motion capture scores. It's going to have that composite score that I touched on. And then Eddie's going to take you through and go through some things on the recruiting side. Once you go over that athlete development plan with the whole team, then we'll get to the next slide where we've got those 3 different recruiting packages. So on the USA Prime side of things, for those scout and recruit players and families that elected to, elect those packages and to play on those teams, this is the annual recruiting seminar. This is a part of that. This is something that, speaking for Eddie, it's probably going to change every year just with how the landscapes change. So it's important to kind of know what's going on year after year. We're going to create a database listing, which is going to house all of that information. That's where we're going to be able to kind of upload videos and things of that nature. We actually talked with the company on Monday, just looking for, what's the best fit for our program, because the big ones like Eddie had mentioned out there, we don't want a database that you just click and it's a generic, what was the one we were looking at, field level, so it's where it's like I don't want something that's just sending hundreds of emails out. Like I want it to be personal and from Eddie. And that's important because again, like that personal relationship matters. Something that's really cool that we actually wanted to roll out last year, but just with the move and everything coming up, we didn't get around to, is we're going to throw a next era college showcase. So what that's going to be is in the fall, probably around like August, I think is what we're targeting, is we're going to put together a college showcase in-house and invite college coaches out to have our players show what they got. Not only so they can see all the technology and all the output numbers that we have, but also give them something they can leave with. That's going to be something that's also included for the USA Prime families. We've been running pretty high level pro days for the last 5 years down here, where we have scouts from almost every MLB team. Eddie and I have even talked about, being able to do a college showcase down in Arizona at our facility down here, and maybe even, invite a lot. Those scouts all live down here. All the agents live down here. And so, if we can get this college showcase out and invite those types of people down there too, I think that'd be great. Obviously, we already touched on that college ready composite score. So one thing that differentiates between like the USA Prime level and then that essential and full service level there is, with the USA Prime players, we're going to give you that initial score, and we're going to be able to kind of stack that up and tell you where you're at. Versus with those essential and full service ones, we're going to be updating that score quarterly and then putting that into your profile so that you can see, are we going the right direction? Do we need to make changes on the development side or on the academic side, and so on and so forth. And then down and map everything at, there we are. So I guess to recap real quick for the USA Prime folks, you're getting that annual recruiting seminar, the database listing, participation in that next era showcase, which is going to be available to all players, near and far, and then getting that initial composite score. And then you roll into that essential package. You're going to be getting the development plan, basically full access to Eddie, being able to dial him up at any time and be able to ask him questions and, send him emails, and he's going to be readily available for you. And then on the essential side, we're going to do quarterly kind of group teams meetings. So those will be both in person and remote. So being able to kind of check in quarterly versus on that full service, it's like, hey, once a month we're checking in. And then just to kind of go on down the line there, academic advising, like Eddie had mentioned, to be able to kind of stack those scholarships included in both the essential and the full service. And then, if you kind of look at the difference between the essential and that full service, the full service is going to essentially be Eddie working for you as like a personal advisor and a personal agent. So, being able to kind of reach out to those coaches, developing that target school list, and then, really kind of sitting down monthly and going over everything. So I'll let him kind of touch a little bit more on that, but those are kind of like the three levels that we're looking at on the recruiting packages. Kind of think of it as like your white glove service, kind of the basic, get you set up and put you in a good position. And then obviously all the stuff that we've kind of built into USA Prime.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Just a couple things on there that I wanted to hit on for the full services or for the essentials. You're going to be getting the availability to talk to me when you need to, and we can kind of walk you through different subjects on a quarterly basis, and then the academic piece. But then once we get into, like Nick said, the full service or the white glove service, that's really going to be kind of what I spoke on towards the back half of the slideshow, which is, meeting with you periodically, every month to say, where are we headed? Where are we tracking towards our goals? Are we on the path that we need to be, or do we need to recalibrate? Because those changes happen, injuries happen, playing time issues happen. You're going to potentially, change high school coaches, all that stuff. Things happen in your career that we need to be aware of. So college coach outreach, that's pretty self-explanatory. I would be fighting for you, basically as a personal, agent, if you want to use that word, but more of like an advisor, kind of helping you through this process step by step, helping you understand what target schools are best for you. You'd never want to reach out to a school that you're not good enough to play at, because first impressions matter. And so we want to make sure that those first impressions are spot on, the right program, so that when we're making that first impression, they're impressed. Because if you don't impress them, I promise you they're crossing your name off the list, and you made a bad impression. The next time your name comes up, the first thing that they think of is bad. It doesn't matter if you've then reached those goals. It's that first impression that makes all the difference. So Um, Offer and commitment guidance, we talked a lot about that. That's super important. It's really valuable for you guys to understand the offers that you're getting, the college that is offering it to you, what position they're in, and what we can do to help you navigate those offers. And then finally, basically kind of walking you all the way up to signing day, and making sure that everything's taken care of. I've had guys that changed their mind the night before signing day. And so, you want to have somebody there that's able to fight for you on your behalf through those processes.
So then real quick on the terms that we're going to roll out with you guys. So obviously with those USA Prime Scout and Recruits team, that performance assessment that we normally charge $399 for, which is again the medical, it's going to be the full performance and skill, and then the initial consultation with Eddie. So that $399 is waived for the USA Prime Scout and Recruits. And then they're getting obviously the USA Prime, recruiting seminar, the database listing, college showcase, all that. That essential plan is only going to be available in a 12-month term, so that's going to be $16.99 per year. Current USA Prime players will get a 15% discount off of that. And then the full service plan is going to be offered in two different structures. So first structure is going to be, again, that kind of 12-month structure for $24.99. That's going to be maybe for, the seniors or the uncommitted juniors that are out there that really just need a year to kind of, get some help and kind of get to that finish line. But then what I think is going to be really fun and unique is that college advisory plan, which is essentially going to be that white glove service for your high school career for $39.99. And what that's going to be is, maybe you're a freshman or a sophomore and you're just kind of on that front side of, really kind of looking into where you want to go, or maybe you're a sophomore entering into your junior year and you're, really starting to ramp it up. So that $39.99 is essentially going to cover you your whole high school career. And again, the USA Prime players, it doesn't matter what level you're at, you're going to get a 15% discount on that. So if you are somebody that is training with us on the private side, we have other options available, like through the Essence or the strength and conditioning side of things. So we're going to come up with some additional memberships for that. So, stay tuned for that. And the whole idea behind that is, if we can get our hands on you for 2 years and really go top to bottom all in on this thing and develop you, we want to take care of you guys. So if you're committed to working with us through all these phases and, really commit to that, we're going to commit to you as well. So that's pretty much it though, guys.
Yeah. So here again is that email where you can reach out if you have questions that we can't answer here in a second. And then I can send you with those emails that link again to book appointments if you'd like.
I'm gonna drop this link right here in the chat. So this is just on our main NextEra website. If you go to the performance tab and just reach out for a request, there's 4 different options. There's physical therapy, there's performance, and then there's recruiting, and then there's another one I can't remember right now. But if you're interested in the recruiting, go ahead and click that recruiting tab, and that's going to go to my admin team, and then my admin team will reach out to Eddie.
Awesome. Well, with that, guys, I don't want to keep you way too long. So if you have questions, please type those into the chat, or if you'd like to, you can unmute yourself and ask those questions right now.
So if you are like Jack is a sophomore now, he'll be going into his junior year obviously this summer. So what package do you think? Because obviously he's going to start ramping up his recruiting now. Our daughter played softball, so we know a little bit about it, but this is far more informative than what we had for her. So like, what would you recommend in terms of packages there for, really heading into this summer and really starting now, I guess?
You want to take that, Nick, or you want me to?
I mean, I guess from a financial standpoint, if you really kind of take that college advisory plan and kind of think of it as breaking it into, essentially 2.5 years of services. I mean, like I said, I mean, it's really meant to be that white glove service where, hey, you're a sophomore. Let's see, where are you at? Where do you stack up against college players, and what do we need to work on for the next 2.5 years? I mean, that's the best time to start, in my opinion, just from a development standpoint. I mean, the best time to start for me is like 8th grade, from like a skill and strength and speed standpoint. But, if you're a high school kid that hasn't really gotten into that stuff yet, that's it's probably the latest you can start and really, kind of make that meaningful change over 3 years. So, but from a recruiting standpoint, I'll let Eddie hand that.
Yeah, I think, anytime you're dealing with more than 1 year, I would say on the financial side, it makes more sense to go full service. And it's definitely going to make more sense on the recruiting side to go full service, because now you're talking about being able to track them over, a 24, 36-month period. You want that personal person that's with you, fighting for you that whole time, rather than, maybe going essential for a year, which is, I mean, you could do it that way, but you're going to miss out on all that personalized stuff that comes along with the recruiting piece. So I would say full service.
Cool. Thanks.
And we looked at, other services that are out there from a recruiting standpoint, and, from a comparison standpoint, it ranged anywhere between, 1,000 for basic stuff. And we even saw some that were around 10,000 that quite honestly offer less than what we were offering on this. And, so to be able to kind of take a look at it and break it down into baseball's expensive. I get it. Training's expensive. I know it. It's even more expensive to have surgery. So being able to kind of wrap everything into one tight bundle is what we're trying to do with it.
Yeah, and I think one thing to hit on that I didn't talk about in the slideshow, but I mean, it's one thing to go out there and spend thousands of dollars for this travel team that is supposed to be getting you exposure. But as I stated, it's hard to get seen just going to a tournament and playing. Those are the guys that are getting seen in that way are guys that get to pitch the one game at East Cobb and they hit 95. I mean, the majority of the recruiting piece, it's tough. Especially the younger you are, you're really going to want that personal advocate fighting for you, making sure that those colleges know where you're going to be playing, and all of the things that I went over earlier. Other questions? Okay.
It's a lot of information.
Yeah, I know it can get to be a lot, and
I actually
ultimately,
do have one more question. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
So our son's an outfielder. He plays left and center, and anybody that knows about an outfielder and trying to get quality video of his angles and how he's fielding is pretty much impossible. So what do you like? Do you guys have some assistance just in USA Prime in general, to really get some good quality video of him, that we can post? Because it's like I said, it's tough.
Yeah, I think obviously there's that aspect of it, but the stuff that we want to try to control is that college showcase. Having somebody out there doing video in-house with us when we're doing that showcase would be that's going to be the easiest path on our end. I know there's a lot of different services out there that do recruiting videos. Eddie, I guess you can kind of touch on that a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you just said is like a big problem with baseball film in general, is that it's hard to get good defensive film of in-game things that are happening. And so I think the most important thing for an outfielder is to put down numbers that prove that you're capable of playing at that level, which for most outfielders means sub 760. So you got to be able to record a sub 760, and that's increasingly getting like sub 69, sub 68. Being able to put down that number means a whole lot more, because like if I'm recruiting you as an outfielder, man, I can teach you angles, right? I can teach you those things. We can give you enough reps in live BP inter squads to make sure you know how to read a ball off the bat. But what I can't really do as a college coach is take your 60 from 7.5 to 6.9 in one semester. So that's the kind of thing that I think is more important. But yeah, I mean, I think the videos that would track towards that for an outfielder would be more of your showcase like videos of like a 60 sub 7 on video with a stopwatch, so the college coach can confirm it. And then the exit velo, all the stuff like that. In-game video for outfielders, like that a college recruiter is going to look at a highlight video and say, hey, I want that kid because he got a great read on that ball. I don't see that really as being uber important anyway.
I will say too, passing the eye test is super important as well too, right? So like, being the right weight, looking the right part and things like that, like just looking athletic and built. And you'd be surprised how many times, you see those PG and PBR videos and, these kids are $145 as a senior, but they hit for average and all that other, that's great. But, the ability to kind of like be skeletally mature and be able to kind of look the part is important too. Anything else?
Other question. As far as setting goals, do you have any guidance for where to start with a freshman? Yeah, so as a freshman, I think the majority of your goals are going to be based off of what your assessment comes back and says about you. And so if we look at your assessment and Britt, I don't know what position your son plays, so it's hard for me to kind of base off of that. But let's say he's a pitcher and he's throwing, 75. Oh, outfield. Okay, let's say he's a 7.660 right now, and his exit velo is, I don't know, 85, and his force plate data says that he's relatively weak compared to other high schoolers in our database. Then our first goals that we're going to set is like, hey, we need to get stronger, faster, and the ability to play the game at a higher level metric wise. Those would be our first goals that we would set. It would have nothing to do with, hey, I need you to hit 500 on your freshman baseball team. It would be, how much work are you putting in to get better so that over the course of your 4-year career, we can sit down and say, hey, you started at 7.560, now you're at 6.8. A college coach can look at that and say, okay, this kid got a lot better and there's a future there.
So do we have the first assessments from the tryout portion at NextEra? We do, but we only did a part of the full assessment there. So for the summertime, we're going to reassess everybody. We are going to do that a little because the tryouts, there's a ton of people there. And, if you were there, it was some parts were smooth, some parts weren't. When we do it team by team, it's a lot easier for us to control 12 to 15 kids at a time versus, an entire mass of people. There's a medical portion of that as well. So measuring hip internal rotation, external rotation, trunk rotation, all these other things that just take way too much time to do in a tryout setting. We use those primarily to look at basically power output, jump height, and then far as assessments go, but we do have all that. If you have specific questions on, where that might be, or where they might have been at back then, that definitely reach out to us and we can get that to you. Super easy to pull up.
Okay. If you have any more questions, now is the time. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully, if you had a chance, please hit that link and sign our sign-up sheet. And I will put that again here in the chat so that if you didn't, you can do that. Or if
Hey,
it's not
Coach,
letting
I'm
you,
sorry, I got one quick question.
go ahead.
This is Javen Carrero's dad. What can we expect next coming up as far as what's just the next happenings, practice? When can we expect to get started?
What team are you on, sir?
It'll be the 15U. I believe it's the recruiters.
Okay. Yeah, so your next step, and Nate, if he's still on here, can jump in if I miss anything. But typically, we don't do a whole lot with our players during the high school baseball season because it's just not necessarily the right thing to do. And so we're waiting until high school baseball ends. Now your coach should be reaching out to you soon to set up team meetings and all of that stuff that comes along with that, as far as schedules and travel stuff. But as far as like meeting as a group and everything, that typically doesn't start until high school baseball ends. And that's when the assessments will happen with NextEra for USA Prime players and all that good stuff going into summer ball.
Cool, thank you.
We've already had a lot of, in-season on the private side, on the strength and conditioning side and things like that. This time of year is when we typically see the highest injury rate, kind of that January, February time of year. It's just where volume has accumulated, and now we're to the point where, everybody's ticking up and going outside and things like that. So we typically see an uptick on the private side and for our private assessments. And to hit on this, is there weight room training availability now through high school? Yes. So on the private side, we typically get kind of busy this time of year because people are reaching out to us. I'll say 50% of it is guys get hurt and then they get funneled into our system. The other 50% is guys just want to get better and get ready for the summer, or they didn't make the team they wanted to make as a high schooler, so they want to work really hard and try to get bigger, faster, stronger. We've got a ton of availability in the evenings after practice, and then we open up super early as well. So if that's a question you have, definitely reach out, give us a phone call, shoot us a text, email, whatever, and we can kind of give you more information on the weight room and development side for in-season training. And on that link too, there is if you are interested in the strength side, just click recruiting and strength, and we can definitely go over all that with you. So try to make it easy.
Yeah, awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in again. Thank you for giving me an hour and a half of your Sunday evening. And hopefully tryouts are starting for all of you here tomorrow. So good luck with those. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to the email that was on the slideshow. We should have all of your emails now on that Google Sheet or through this so that we can reach out to you. But feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any more questions, and we will be in touch with you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.